Everything you learned in history class was a lie. Well, maybe not everything, but they skipped the best parts. Introducing Stupiracy, where stupidity meets conspiracy. Ever heard of the Olympic marathon that nearly killed its runners? Or the time a pope put another pope's corpse on trial? Join me, Scott Rizzuto, and Tim McKernan as we uncover the most outrageous historical moments and mind-blowing conspiracies you won't believe actually happened. Tune in to Stupiracy for your weekly dose of historical absurdity. Available wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, history is dumb, but laughing at it is smart.
And now, live from the TCL broadcast studios, it's Joe Souchere and Patrick Royce with Sports Talk.
And good afternoon. Thursday afternoon it is, 3 o'clock, 3:03 to be exact, along with Chris Reuvers and Manny Hill. I'm Pete Waggoner. Not exactly Royce and Souchere, but we'll do our best over the next 3 hours, guys. There's so much to talk about.
That's the beauty of holiday week. Coles and I were just talking about this. I love working this week because, we're light on personnel, but there's always stuff going on this time of the year.
Well, it's lighting up like a Christmas tree, no question. So, we're sitting here looking around what's going on in the sports world. And first of all, over the next 3 hours, we're going to have a lot to talk about. But obviously the big news that's hitting us out there is Miguel Sano.
Yeah.
At first it was, Judd wrote a nice piece on ESPN, 1500ESPN.com about his trade value, looking at some things out there about what are they going to do with him and so forth and so on. And people saying, you're going to trade him. They're talking about the weight issues and all the other things that surround him. And now it comes out today, recently, that there's now some sexual assault charges on him. That have been levied. And then there have been, Chris, some things that have popped out there that aren't necessarily very complimentary from former teammate Trevor Plouffe, who came to the accuser's aid there, as did current teammate Trevor May. What's going on?
I'll read the story for those that might not be familiar. A Minnesota sports photographer with a presence in the camera wheel at Target Field has accused Minnesota Twins third baseman Miguel Sano of sexual assault. Betsy Bisson, who has done photography work for the online publication Twins Daily, says she frequently shoots player autograph events, posted to Twitter today that Sano assaulted her after one such event at a local mall. She writes that Sano flirted with her during the signing and then later attempted to forcibly pull her by the wrist into a restroom while trying to kiss her. She said she resisted and screamed, but that nobody came to help. She wrote that he gave up after a solid 10 minutes of fighting to pull me through that door. No, he didn't rape me, but he sure did assault me, she wrote. Bisson tweeted later the alleged incident occurred in 2015. Sano denies the allegations today, according to his agent Rock Nation, saying that, quote, "It never happened. I unequivocally deny the allegation made against me today. It never happened. I have the utmost respect for women, especially those working in professional sports, and I deeply sympathize with anyone who has experienced sexual harassment. There is no place for it in our society." Bisson wrote at the top of the Twitter post that this is not easy for me to share, but I feel I need to share it. This is my story, followed by the hashtag #MeToo. Bisson declined to comment for the story. The Twins issued a statement this afternoon. Today, the Minnesota Twins were made aware of allegations involving Miguel Sano at an offset appearance during the 2015 season. The Twins, along with Major League Baseball, take these allegations very seriously. Until more information is gathered, the Twins will have no further comment.
So the takeaway there from what you hear is you've got a respected photojournalist who held off for a few years and now felt comfortable enough to bring this forward. It apparently happened. He asked her to shop. I mean, there's something mentioned in there in the story, and then things went from there. The part, Chris, that's got me kind of thinking is you've got a player agent that was there for that photo shoot.
That was present, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you're going to have all sorts of things, two people that are going to have to speak to that.
And as you mentioned, Trevor Plouffe said, "I'm so sorry about this. I understand why," in reference to Betsy Bisson's post on Twitter. Trevor Plouffe, former Twins third baseman, said, "I'm so sorry about this. I understand why you didn't, but I wish you would have come to me." Feeling, a sense of guilt that she had to keep this story in hiding for some time.
Isn't that interesting, though? There must be some sort of professional relationship there. Now, you think that would be something that he would say to her off the record, or
sure.
But that's a very public statement.
Yeah, when it's posted like that on social media, it's there for everyone to take. Yeah.
So you're not afraid of what you're writing, and are you saying perhaps out loud that this is something I'm not surprised about? Has this happened? What's going on?
Well, the part that, because I've been following this on social media, oddly enough, but the part that everybody's jumping to a conclusion right away, whether Joe describes this best. He has a rule. We got to wait 48 hours. We got to wait till we get all the information out there before any of us included, makes an accusation or sides with someone, because granted, she put it out there. She's got her story. We have to take it at face value. He obviously, this is a free country. He has the right to tell his side of the story. But everybody's jumping, and she is getting filleted by, I don't know if it's Twins fans or whatever. And I'm thinking, people, calm down. Take a breath here. Don't just run and be critical of this woman who, and she's even said it in her story, I have nothing to gain from this. She's like, I'm just telling my story because I've been living with this for a couple of years now. And then there's why'd you wait so long? Well, you can't accuse somebody of waiting no matter what the length of time is. Every person has a right to deal with whatever story they want to at whatever time frame that they choose to.
Well, and you do need to allow it to marinate for 48 hours, right? But it really is okay to say, what does this mean? It doesn't mean you're drawing conclusions off it, but it's okay to ask some questions. But to your point, Chris, anytime someone comes forward with a story, there is no right or wrong time. Mm-hmm. It's dependent upon when you're comfortable with it. And if now is the time, now is the time. And
the Twins, I think, will do, like they did issue a statement, and obviously they're going to go through every protocol that they need to, along with Major League Baseball, like they stated before, because I know that this was a big part of the most recent CBA that they, as all sports kind of have done, is they've enhanced their allegation, whatever you want to call it. They've enhanced that part of their collective bargaining agreement to take stories like this very seriously and go through every single protocol that they need to.
Well, indeed they do. And Manny, you and I were talking a little bit about this, and we're going to hear from Brandon Warren from the Athletic Zone coverage as well a little bit later on. He'll be on up toward the 5 o'clock hour when we speak to him. But there's already been some trade discussions, or there's been some rumblings. Doogie here at the Hubbard Group, and of course with 1500ESPN.com was mentioning about how there have been some feelers out there for his trade value. This certainly can't help, along with the injury issues, along with the weight.
No, it can't. And, I mean, obviously this particular situation is certainly an entirely different sort of circumstance, I guess, if you want to call it, from, him showing up at spring training, weighing a certain amount or being out of shape or all this other stuff that's been reported on him in the past. But it's just a really, really, really tough situation. And I don't know, man. It's just it's unfortunate that regardless of whatever happened, it's just unfortunate that these things are happening. And again, I'm not going to pick a side here or, really, decide who I believe or anything on this matter, because it's just like Sue just said, wait 48 hours. But it's just a really, really, really unfortunate
And it's reflective,
situation.
too, on 2017 in that everybody wants an instant answer. Everybody wants to have resolution right away, where we don't have the patience or the time anymore to just let the legal process take its course, where that's what needs to happen here, ladies and gentlemen. We gotta calm down. We're not going to have an answer in the next 15 minutes. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in today.
And it doesn't help when you have former teammates and current teammates jumping into that now instant gratification social media sphere, making statements that are supportive or not supportive, whatever they are. I mean, that just adds fuel to the fire, and that is the world we live in today and how it all works. There was one final thing here before we take the break, guys. Around these parts, and I won't reveal the source, it was believed that he was moved to the outfield a couple of years ago because they wanted to keep him moving, and that weight was an issue, and it's always been an issue with that team. We're going to get into that deeper with Brandon a little bit later on, so time for a break, Chris? Let's do that real quick. When we come back, it's going to be Danny Hendrickson from the State of Hockey, as we have plenty to talk about right here on 1500 ESPN. You know what? This might have been the last, in my opinion, Chris, good Van Halen song written.
You're not a tattoo guy?
I'm not.
Okay.
I mean, I guess 5150 is fine, but it was just, I guess I'm a David Lee Roth vintage. I still am.
Well, you're not alone in that. That's for sure.
You know what I mean? But I do appreciate the different versions. The Gary Sharon version was the worst. Remember that one?
Oh, I do. That
he was
pretty
screaming
bad.
on every song.
That was pretty bad.
It was rough, of course, from Extreme, more than words. Okay, how about that? We're going to shift gears here. Opened up heavy on Miguel Sano there. We'll probably pick that back up over the course of the next few hours here into this program. But we're happy to bring on the State of Hockey's Danny Hendrickson, who, of course, is the former Golden Gopher, one of the other brothers, of course, Darby Hendrickson. We need to give no more further intro to that. Danny, I know you're on location. Good to hear from you, buddy. How are you?
Wags, I wish I was in the studio. I want to be at Hubbard with you. It's more fun jamming to the music.
It is. And you know what? Your chair is empty right now. And Gino Parrish, one of the other halves of the other brothers, is empty now. Of course, we're referring to our On the Ice radio show that we do on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. And Danny and I also do a lot of work with the stateofhockey.com. Check everything out there. We've got a program that's going to be airing live today. I'll be in two places at once somehow.
Don't
at 4.
Yeah, but you got to wait till 6 after Wags is done.
Yeah,
right?
well, somehow I've been cloned, man. I don't know how that's going to work. So, but we've got that. And, you and Gino have been doing some really good stuff with your other brothers. And one of the things that we're doing is with the high school hockey scene, it's so fun to get out there. There's great crowds. The kids are passionate. It's community-based. And you guys really get out there. You pick a place each week, and you have a great time with some of the students in the student section. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing with your segments?
Sure. Well, obviously we kind of came up with this together, but so we're coming up with a high school hockey weekly show. Obviously, like you said, it's on stateofhockey.com. You can watch past episodes before. But of course, we're going to highlight the great players. We've got the Let's Play Hockey top teams. We've got the plays for the week. We've got all these great hockey players. But Gino and I are running around the state of Minnesota, and we're focusing in on the fans and seeing who's got the craziest fans. We're not going to crown anybody yet, but we're gonna listen to people and find out who's the craziest, and then go out there and videotape them and interview them just like they're players and talk about what it's like to be a fan. So it's really fun. It's kind of silly, but it's just kind of this who can show the most school spirit, and who can get behind their club, and who can have the most fun. Well,
then of course you're each week. You were at Cretin-Derham Hall this past weekend, and I have to tell you, these guys get better every week. This is a good one.
I'm excited to see it. It's funny. It's all about producers and editors, which you know. So Gino and I are silly enough to give you something to go with, and I'm excited to see it.
You know what editors and producers are?
Awesome.
Artists.
Exactly.
It's art.
Exactly. Yeah, it is art.
You had a terrific chirp on the Edina bus with their Hornet Pride trailer.
Yeah,
you jumped all over that like a cheap suit, and it was, and then you had the police escort, which you thought was a little much too.
Well, that was
you thought it was Air Force One. You said Air Force One wasn't available.
There was a photo of the Edina bus with the great trailer, the Hornet on the back, and then there was a cop behind it. So we acted like they were getting the police escort, like they're too scared to drive home from St. Paul by themselves.
Well, I mean,
we chirped it, and I will say that you know that I love Edina and love people from Edina. We edited in Edina. Couldn't love Edina more. But it's just so fun to they're just such an easy target so many times. So
for sure. They're absolutely required. They're like food. It's daily food.
Yeah.
Without it, what else is there?
Yeah,
right.
And absolutely. So, and I think people from Edina, for the most part, kind of enjoy it too. So it's just all good fun.
So we pump these shows out once a week. They usually air on Tuesdays at 4 due to Christmas falling on Monday. We're doing it Thursday today at 4, and then you'll see it again next week, Thursday at 4. Among other things, we do some live streaming, and we've got 3 great games next week. Centennial at Maple Grove, Duluth East at Stillwater, and Moorhead will be at Wayzata. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And you've been away from the game. You played professionally, and you also played for the Golden Gophers. We're a Richfield Spartan. Getting back to the rinks, what's the one thing, Danny, that you're gathering from what you're watching, as far as not only from the fan interaction perspective, but the play, the level of play? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I just start by saying I have been away from the game competitively, but I was just outside on Grand Lake here near St. Cloud shoveling a rink. I'm watching my girls out a window right now skating around. So I'm still so around. I love it just as much as I ever had. And talking about the fans, I feel like, you know, people, especially in this new age of media, have got even more creative, and it's expected to be a little crazy. So I just think it's so neat, especially hockey. All sports are cool, but especially hockey in Minnesota, how much the whole community and all the other students just kind of rally around their team, and everyone's so excited for the game. So it's kind of neat to be a part of, and obviously we're on the outside, but we get to feel it a little bit, and it's just a fun, neat thing to be a part of.
What are your thoughts from the perspective of having played with Darby at Richfield, your brother? There's not a lot of opportunities where players or people get to play with siblings like that, and you guys were very dynamic together. What was that experience like, and is it still stuff that you guys talk about?
For sure. I just shared a room with them on a wild trip last weekend, and we shared a room for 16 years. But you know, it was the coolest brother to have, because growing up in Richfield, I thought I was, you know, not very good because you're always competing against Darby. But nonetheless, we always played ball hockey, pond hockey, just like everybody did in our era. But to be able to play with them in high school was one of the coolest things I've ever done. We got to make it to the state tournament. Yeah. So that was, I mean, I think it's everybody's dream. I mean, I think people say NHL, but to make it to the tourney is still one of the coolest things in the world.
You know, I don't mean for you to speak for Darby, but would he say the same thing?
Oh, yeah.
Would he say the same?
He would. And you know what? He's such a professional. It depends on what show he was on. So if he was on this show, he'd say for sure, especially if I was on. But I'm sure his run in 2003 with the Wild was pretty special, too.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. But it's hard to not think that high school is not as fun as any time of your life.
What was that trip to Florida like? Obviously, your brother being an assistant coach, so mentors or siblings went there. For the players, it was fathers. What kind of bonding went on with all of those guys, and what was the weekend like?
It was super cool. So we spent 3 days in Fort Lauderdale. The Panthers arena is somewhere near there. I can't figure out quite where it is. But so you're in a beach town for 3 days. You're all with the team. I mean, you get to meet the other coaches, Chuck Fletcher, everybody. It's first class. So it's you're staying at nicer hotels than you used to. But it's really special for the dads, you know, especially for the brothers. You know, a handful of guys bred brothers, but that was cool too. But to see the dads and how proud they were of their sons, and to watch them, you know, sit next to them and talk to them, and they've all got similar stories, but they're all unique too. So, but being with the dads and watching them, just going like, "Yep, my kid made it. Who knows how?" And the one thing that I thought was weird was that I talked to their dads, and I'm like, "So did you have some perfect formula?" And every single dad's like, "You know what? I really didn't do anything." Like he kind of did it all himself, and of course he helped him a little bit, but everyone had the same story where they were not overly pushed, and that was kind of one thing that I was like, that's interesting.
How about the legend Terry Cullen? I think I saw a picture on Wild.com with he and Matt.
Yeah,
and you know, Matt's like 60. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fossil. I mean, the guy is old. He makes Gordie Howe look like a hack, right? No, the guy is old for the NHL. What is he, 41 now? Going whatever.
You know,
40?
he's about my age, yeah.
Yeah, he's
41. Yeah,
okay.
Gotta be.
But Terry, I mean, the gene pool there, man, they just robbed it, because Terry must be, what, mid-60s, 70, looking great.
He looked fantastic. I did see him and Matt sitting by the pool, and, they both are in great shape.
Terry's probably still cut.
Oh, yeah. And they both got such great attitudes, too. I think they both, you know, I mean, there's two people. They were walking by. I'm like, how many games played and how many games coached in that family?
It's incredible.
You know, I mean,
thousands.
A couple million?
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Class X there. Danny, we got to cut you loose, and I'll be in touch with you very soon.
Hey, Wags, thanks for getting me on. Best in the business.
Love having you. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. As are you.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, Danny Hendrickson, he is from thestateofhockey.com. Check out his stuff streaming live and online. When we come back, we're going to talk Wild with Dane Mizutani. He's the St. Paul Pioneer Press and TwinCities.com beat writer for the Minnesota Wild. Right after this.
And we're going to now head out east and get the Your Money Now report. It comes to us from our friends down in Owatonna, Minnesota at Federated Insurance. From the Wall Street Journal, here is Bruce Vail with your money now.
And stocks were higher at the close of a fairly quiet trading session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, though, did move to a fresh record high. The Dow gained 63 points to close at 24,837. The Nasdaq Composite rose 10 points. The S&P 500 gained 4 and is close to a record high. If we get a nice rally tomorrow, all three indexes may end the year at record closes. In the wake of President Trump's move to pull the U.S. from the Trans-Pacific Partnership and renegotiate NAFTA, Cargill is pushing back. The commodities giant has launched a new Fed by Trade website and is enlisting its own workforce to tell stories of how they all depend on international trade for their livelihoods. A new survey shows Minneapolis is the second most expensive destination in the Midwest for New Year's Eve. ChicagoHotels.org did the survey, looking at the cheapest available room rates at centrally located hotels with at least 3-star ratings. At a rate of $259 for the cheapest available double room, Minneapolis trails only Detroit, where the rate is $359. I'm Bruce Vail with your money now on 1500 ESPN.
Hey, Bruce.
Yes?
See you tomorrow.
I'll be here.
All right, thank you.
Welcome back once again to Sports Talk. Pete Wagner in for Patrick Royce right here on 1500 ESPN, along with Chris Reuvers and Manny Hill. We've got a full slate of Sports Talk. We're going to downshift now into Wild Talk as we're going to be joined by the St. Paul Pioneer Press, TwinCities.com's very own Dane Mizutani. And we say good afternoon to you, Dane. How about that Wild win last night? We're talking about this being the start of the second half, if you can believe that already. As they say, according to Charlie Coyle, there's no more time to waste.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Pete.
You bet. Thanks for being here.
It's like Bruce Boudreau said last night. I mean, they had a kind of a bad front nine, and he likened it to a round of golf. The Wild had a bad front nine, but they can still make it up on the back nine. So it's the unofficial start of the second half. The official start of the second half doesn't start for a few more games here. But the Wild know they have to kind of start getting things rolling here. Going into the Christmas break, losing 4 of 5, that wasn't good. And I guess last night just was kind of what they hoped would be a start of something good. With the 4-2 win over Dallas, essentially a 4-point game last night. If they would have lost, they would have been out 6 points with Dallas in the first wild card spot. Now they pull within 2. If the season ends today, they would be in the playoffs with Anaheim losing last night. So 41 points, still haven't had their full roster. They've got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. And a guy named Zach Parise is coming back to the team in a few weeks here. So things are looking up, I guess you could say, for them. But they got to keep things rolling with Nashville coming up.
There's plenty of uptick there for them to say. And, you know, they've teetered in and out of those 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 spots. It's just been so tight. There's a little bit of separation up top when you look at Nashville leading the way. Their opponent, they'll be at Nashville on Saturday. Nashville with 49 points, Winnipeg with 48, and St. Louis with 48. By the way, my good friend Doug Armstrong with a contract extension. I think he got 5 years with a possible 6th option there, so congratulations to him. But nonetheless, there's a little bit of separation between those 3 teams and then the 2 teams in the wild card slot, which are Dallas and Minnesota. Your opinion from that perspective, do you see those teams maintaining the tempo and pace they have among the top 3 teams in the Central, and Dallas and Minnesota duking it out with the rest?
I think so. I mean, it's going to be pretty hard for at least Minnesota, I think, to catch those 3 teams that are leading right now. I could see a team like Dallas maybe overtaking a Winnipeg if, you know, Mark Scheifele's out for 6 to 8 weeks. That could really put a damper on what they've been doing up there in Winnipeg. But the other 2 teams, Nashville's a legitimate Stanley Cup contender again this year, and in St. Louis, they're battling some injuries right now, but they're solid. So it's going to be tough for them. And you look at what the Wild are battling against. It'll be with the Stars, with the Anaheim Ducks, with the Chicago Blackhawks, all for those 2 wild card spots, and the Calgary Flames in there even. I mean, it's going to be tough for them right now with the sheer teams that they're battling for with those final 2 spots. So I don't see them overtaking anybody in the top 3 in the Central right now. So I think the way you're going to see it the rest of the year is them battling for one of those 2 wild card spots.
Interestingly enough, Chicago is one of those teams that are in the battle for the wild card slot, and Corey Crawford was just put on the injured reserve list with an injury. That can't bode well for the Hawks because he's very critical to their success.
Yeah, definitely. And like with Corey Crawford getting injured in Chicago and certain guys getting injured in St. Louis, I mean, and Mark Scheifele getting injured in Winnipeg, you're starting to see the injury bug catch up to some of these teams in the Central Division. The Wild have been kind of dealing with it all year with certain guys missing time. Zach Parise, obviously the most notable, but Devin Dubnyk, too, has been out for a few weeks here now. Alex Stalock filling in pretty well in his place, and I think sounds like we're going to get Dubnyk back at some point this weekend. But that's kind of the way it goes. I mean, you see a lot of these teams dealing with these injuries, and the Wild know firsthand what that can do to a season. So you mentioned Chicago. Obviously, they have some guys on that team that have some experience. Corey Crawford is out indefinitely. I think there are some guys that are going to be able to pick up the slack offensively there. But certainly the backstop there, that's not a good sign for them, just with everything he brings to that team. So we'll see. I mean, maybe there's an opportunity here if the Wild can get hot, maybe put a little run together to maybe create some space, at least from the Blackhawks.
With the injuries the Wild have had, you mentioned that they've never really had their full lineup from the very beginning of the season. It's just been one after the other. Zach Parise has been slowly nursing his way back after his back surgery, and it sounds like now he's headed down to Des Moines to play with the Iowa Wild for a couple of tune-up games. You've been able to watch him closely in practice. You know how he starts and stops and how he plays with a verve like no other. Do you think he's going to be able to be at his full level potential within a few games here, or is this going to be a slow process for him?
I think it'll be a slow build for Zach. I mean, we're going down to watch him tonight, so it'll be interesting to see him in full contact, in live action. Watching him in practice, obviously, is going to be a lot different than watching him in a full game. I think it's been 250 days since he's played in an actual game. So just seeing how he's able to kind of take contact, go into the corners. He said days after his surgery that he's not going to change the way he plays. And Zach Parise can't change the way he plays, or he's not an effective player. I mean, he has to play that certain way. That's who they signed him to be. And if he's not playing that way, then that's not the player they signed him to be. So just looking at what he's going to need to do, the Wild need him to continue to play that way, and I do think it'll take some time to get there. But this rehab stint in Iowa will be a good test, I guess, a good barometer to see how he looks, how he feels afterwards, and I guess after this game, maybe he'll get a better idea, and then we'll get a better idea of when he'll actually be back.
Boy, that's a whole program within itself, a discussion about a player that you sign to the contract that you do, that is the player that he is and executes the way he does. If he can't do what you signed him to do and you have lots of term left on his contract, what does that mean?
I don't know what it means. I mean, we're only halfway through this contract, so if he's not who he was signed up to be for, at this point, it could be kind of tough sledding for the Wild moving on. But I think they're just kind of hopeful that he's going to work his way back. He's been dealing with this lingering back injury, since he missed the playoffs a couple years ago. So I think getting this surgery, they hope, is something that can, maybe put an end to this once and for all, and then he can kind of get back to playing the way he can. But yeah, I agree. If he's not 100% for this contract, it could cripple the team because he's on the books for quite some time.
Well, it's tricky because when you sign a player like that, you sign a player that plays that style. Along with that comes the body that will break down. It's almost like if you want to drive a Formula One car, right? That's a little bit more for just long distance, endurance and just hitting the oval. Or if you have like the NASCAR, which is going to get pounded on the bull ring of a Bristol or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to last as long, but that's going to happen when you take that. But it's a risk, I think, when you do it at the time. Given where this team was at, they didn't really have a choice because those stands were pretty empty at the time, and Craig Leopold had to do something.
Yeah, and looking back at those two signings, hindsight's obviously 20/20, but at the time, those two were the marquee guys, the best two guys on the market, and the Wild got them. So everyone was feeling great, and obviously, if you knew Zach was going to break down, maybe there's different decisions that would have been made, but that's easy to say now, 5 years down the road. At the time, I think that was the right move. Everyone I've talked to kind of says that I mean, they didn't really have a choice. What were they going to do, not sign them? It was a good move to get the top two guys at the time. They made a big splash. They got into the playoffs, which we've seen in the NHL. Sometimes that can be enough. You just get to the playoffs and then you get hot. So, I mean, they've done that the past 5 years. They're hoping for 6. To be tough this year to have done. So we'll see how he comes back. With if they're going to make their playoff push, which the players have talked about, the fact that it has to start now, Zach Parise is going to have to be a big part of that.
Well, I always say talk is cheap, boys. Back it up. Hey, drive safe. Are you almost to Des Moines?
About an hour out. So
Okay, well,
we'll see. The roads are getting better.
Okay, well, finally, an hour out. Good for you. Be safe on your way back, buddy. We'll be in touch soon, all right?
All right, thanks, Pete.
That was Dane Mizutani, he from the St. Paul Pioneer Press and TwinCities.com. Pete Waggoner in for Patrick Royce on Sports Talk right here on 1500 ESPN. Welcome you back to Sports Talk. Pete Waggoner in for Patrick Royce here on 1500 ESPN, joined once again by 2 pros. We're talking about Chris Reuvers and Manny Hill guys.
Oh, I was wondering who you're bringing in.
No.
We're pros some of the time.
2
Wags.
legit pros.
Not really.
Well, come on.
Everyone's willing to work during the holidays, that's why.
Right. Do you get time and a half for that?
No. We get the assurance of carrying the company while
Absolutely.
everybody else is enjoying vacation.
Your back is starting to buckle. The
You know,
way,
it is
the way
getting
the world
a little
is on
sore.
your shoulders.
It is
isn't
getting
it?
a little sore. Yeah.
It really is. Manny, are you doing better? You had a tough afternoon today.
Yeah, I had to replace the battery in my car.
Oh, no.
Just freezing too, weren't you?
Yeah, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun.
Did that happen at your home, or were you mobile when this breakdown occurred?
I was mobile, and I was able to get some help for it and replace the battery, and it's all good now.
So did you
Thank
have your
goodness.
emergency roadside kit with the blankets and the extra hats and all that stuff they tell you to have?
No, I'm
Why
not.
would
I'm
you?
not. I'm not that
I'm
smart.
not either. I never wear gloves either. My hands are just a disaster. They're like one big crack.
Yeah.
Right now. I mean, I keep the what is that? The lotion hand cream stuff in stock in business. Because gloves, you just lose them.
Yeah, I've probably gone through about 6 or 7 pairs of gloves in the last 2 years.
See?
Probably.
I'm right with you there. Couple things I wanted to mention about the Wild with Dane before we took the break, and we talked about Zach Parise and his injuries, and it's part of the game when you bring a guy like that in. But one of the things, Eric Stahl has been quietly a huge pickup for the Wild over the past 2 years. He had a rough year before he came here, and when he culminated in New York with the Rangers for a couple of games at the trade deadline, it was like oof. And now, again, he's 32 points in 37 games. I don't know if he gets enough credit. People kind of, he sort of does his thing.
The goal that he scored last night was such a veteran move in that, he went to the backhand, and you almost want to think that he deliberately shot it off the other guy's skate, and then it went in. It was a very savvy move, I thought, when you watched the replay of it. Because in real time, you thought, oh, God, what a great pass. And then when you saw the replay, it went off the defender's skate. I just thought it was a great play.
I love the big center. I spin the 6'3" guys like he and Koivu. The bigger you are down the middle, the stronger you are in the defensive zone. And I just like all of that. And I think it's incredible. One thing from last night's game, I don't know if you guys caught that. Did you see much of it, or did you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see that goal? Sagan fires the puck off the end boards. That's a pass with a perfect angle to the man on the back door. I just laughed. That I don't know if you recall that, but that was on purpose.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely. He had a perfect angle off it. I said he did that on purpose.
Okay.
He's that type of player. And those are the things where if you catch it and you see it, that's like art. It was incredible.
And that's why those guys are at such a different level than everybody else. They're the best players in the world for a reason. I guess I didn't look at it that way, but now that you mention it, he probably did do that on purpose.
It was impressive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So those are the things that you appreciate. And one of the things about this team, other than last year, that's been from an observer, fan, whatever you want to call it, perspective, is it's always been this just battle to get into the playoffs, fighting for 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th seed in the West.
Yeah.
If you go all the way down to the 14th place team in the West, they're all within 5 or 6 points of a wild card. You could have a rough week and be in trouble. So this is no rest for the weary for Wild fans. But if you get in the 8th slot, it's not like the NBA where you're buried and swept out of there. I mean, 8th seeded teams have won the cup.
There's no Golden State in the NHL right now.
No.
Was it Nashville an 8 seed last year?
I thought they were like
they were a
six, maybe.
They were a
wild card.
They're a wild card team. Yeah, they were 7 or 8.
Yeah, that's what I thought last year.
Okay.
Well, but that's just it, and that's why the parity of the league is, I think, what a lot of people don't think it's good for the game. I think it's great for the game. I mean, to be honest, I mean, there's such a slim margin of error. I mean, yeah, you have your superstars in the league that can single-handedly make the difference. Look at Tampa Bay. I mean, last year their coach almost got fired, and now they're the best team in the league right now. I think it's actually good for hockey to have that kind of parity. You're going to have your bad teams, whether it's, I don't know, who is it right now? Phoenix? I have no idea who the worst team in the NHL is currently. Okay. Yeah. But that's why I think that's actually good for hockey. I really do.
Well, so that brings up, to me, a great talker, guys. Is it better to have the Chicago Bulls that run the table and are just dominant, or Golden State, Manny, as you mentioned a second ago there, or a New York Islanders of their runs? Or, how people love to see that? Do they really love it?
Well, look at what we saw.
What I mean?
Speaking of Nashville, I mean, look at what we saw last year. I mean, that town absolutely came to life because of that hockey team. And
Keith Urban.
Yeah. I mean, it was really cool to watch. And I think things like that. I mean, for God's sake, Charles Barkley
Nicole Kidman
was wearing a Predators jersey at the Stanley Cup Finals.
He was talking hockey.
That's the kind of exposure and the kind of stuff that hockey desperately needs.
Well, it was really good. So but I think the old adage of is, do you want teams that dominate like the Bulls did, and where everybody's trying to line up to beat them?
I think it depends.
Or do you want the parity?
I think it depends on the sport. I think a sport like hockey and the NHL in particular needs to have the Cinderella stories more so than the NBA does.
I would agree with
just
that.
Because of the popularity between the two leagues. From a national standpoint, the NHL is really popular here in this state because Minnesota's such a huge hockey state. But I think around the country, the NHL isn't quite as popular. So when you get a Nashville Predators team to come out of nowhere, it works out good.
Indeed, it does. We got a great second hour coming up for you when we switch over to the ride with Patrick Royce. We're going to dip out here as we continue Sports Talk with Patrick Royce. Pete Wagner in for him on 1500 ESPN.
1500 ESPN presents 52 super stories leading up to the big game. Brought to you by Mr. Money Talk, Josh Arnold, where you always get straight talk, not sugar-coated advice. Here's Patrick Royce.
Number 4 in the order for the Grade 8 Super Bowls was Super Bowl 47. Baltimore 34, San Francisco 31, played on February 13th, 2013. And the 10th Super Bowl played in New Orleans, which, by the way, I've always insisted should be the permanent home for this game, with the food, drink, partying, and venial sins that take place in that wonderful city. San Francisco had won 5 Super Bowls and played in 10 NFC title games in the 80s and 90s, then hit the skids starting in 2003. Jim Harbaugh was hired away from Stanford for 2010, and the 49ers had a quick turnaround, going 13-3 before losing to the Giants in the 2011 NFC title game. They were 11-4-1 in 2012, first with Alex Smith as quarterback, then second-year backup Colin Kaepernick took over when Smith was injured. Smith was healthy for the playoffs, but Harbaugh stuck with Kaepernick, and he led them to a 45-31 victory over Green Bay with 181 yards rushing, and then back from a 17-0 deficit versus Atlanta in the NFC title game. Baltimore was a number 4 seed and beat Indianapolis, Denver, and stifled New England and Tom Brady 28-13 in the AFC title game in Foxborough. John Harbaugh was in his 5th season as a Ravens coach, making it brother versus brother in the Super Bowl. The 49ers were 4.5-point favorites, but Baltimore took it to them for a 21-6 halftime lead. Then the Ravens' Jacoby Jones opened the second half with a 108-yard kickoff return, the longest play in Super Bowl history, and the obits were being written for San Francisco.
Jones is past the 50 and a kickoff return, 109 yards and a touchdown, an all-time record.
Soon thereafter, the power failed in the Superdome and the game was delayed for 34 minutes.
The lights on the
49ers side of the Superdome are out.
There were a couple of punts, and then Kaepernick and the 49ers exploded for 17 points before the end of the third quarter. After a Baltimore field goal, Randy Moss had a 32-yard reception, and then Kaepernick went 15 yards for a touchdown to make it 31-29 Ravens, and every football fan in the country was amazed how the blowout had turned into a shootout. The Ravens kicked another field goal, then had to stop San Francisco after it reached first and goal at the 7.
Final pass in the back of the end zone is incomplete. It was going for Crabtree. Baltimore has held.
Joe Flacco was the MVP, throwing for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns. And many of us watching that night were saying, if I had a chance to take one young quarterback in the NFL right now, it would be Kaepernick.
52 Super Stories continues next week. Brought to you by Mr. Money Talk, Josh Arnold, where you always get straight talk, not sugar-coated advice. And for more details on Super Bowl 52 coming to the Twin Cities in 2018, sign up for the host committee email at mnsuperbowl.com.